My beloved brothers and sisters, last night as I was taken in the Spirit, I crossed from this life into eternity. And there, face to face, the Lord Jesus Christ spoke to me. He revealed something that most people in the church are silent about, something that chains millions in secret. And he said to me, "Tell my people what I am about to show you." What Jesus told me about MASTURBATION will shock you, and it will set you free forever. Don't miss a single word. When I stood before the Lord, I felt His love like a mighty ocean, yet His eyes were flames of fire that saw through every secret of the human heart. He spoke to me not to condemn, but to heal. He said, "My church is suffering in silence. They cover their shame, but I see their struggle. I see the addiction that no one talks about. And I have a word for them today." My friend, what I heard shook me to my core. This is not just about sin, it is about destiny. This is about purity, authority, and the power of God flowing in your life. If you stay with me until the end of this message, the very chains you thought could never be broken will fall off your life tonight. When the Lord opened my eyes in that encounter, I felt as though my entire soul had been laid bare before Him. Every thought I had ever entertained, every hidden action I believed no one had seen, every shadow that clung to my inner life, it was as if they were written in letters of fire before His gaze. His eyes were not filled with condemnation, but with a piercing clarity that stripped away all pretense. And He spoke to me, not in the thunder of judgment, but in the quiet yet irresistible voice that comes from eternity. He said, "There is nothing hidden from me." Many of my children live as if I do not see. They struggle in the dark corners of their rooms. They cry in secret after falling into the same habit again and again, and yet they believe they are invisible to me. But I already know, and still, I do not turn away from them. My heart trembled as I heard these words, because I understood that so many live under a terrible deception. They imagine that secrecy shields them from the eyes of heaven, but the reality is that the Lord sees every detail, every thought, every impulse. What shocked me was not that He sees, because the scriptures tell us that all things are naked and open before Him, but that His seeing is not the gaze of an accuser. His gaze is that of a redeemer. He looks upon the very sin we are most ashamed of, and instead of recoiling, He leans closer with a love that burns to cleanse and restore. He said, "My church suffers in silence. My sons and daughters are carrying a hidden burden that robs them of joy, peace, and confidence before me. They come to my house and lift their hands, but their hearts are weighed down by what they do when no one is watching. They are chained in cycles of secrecy, and the enemy whispers lies to them that they are the only ones, that they are unworthy, that they must hide. Yet I tell you, I see them, I know them, and I call them to freedom." I realized in that moment that the greatest tragedy is not the act itself, but the loneliness that follows it, the crushing sense of isolation, the thought that if anyone knew, they would reject you. But the Lord declared, "I already know, and still, I have not rejected them. I long to heal what is broken inside. I long to take away their shame. If only they would stop hiding from me, they would discover that I am not a harsh master waiting to strike them down, but a gentle Savior reaching to lift them up." I wept when I heard this, because I saw in the Spirit millions of believers across the world who wear bright smiles in public yet cry on their pillows at night. I saw young men and women who hunger for God yet fall again and again into the same weakness, and every time their hope grows dimmer. The Lord said, "They do not understand my heart. They think I turn my face away, but I lean in closer. They think I despise them, but I died for them. They think they are unworthy of my presence, but I shed my blood so they could enter boldly into it. And the Lord began to show me something deeper. He said, the problem is not merely the physical act. The deeper wound is the lie that they are alone in their struggle. The deeper wound is the voice of shame that keeps them bound in secrecy. For as long as they hide, the enemy grows stronger. But when they bring their weakness into my light, his power is broken. As he spoke, I was reminded of Adam in the garden, hiding among the trees after he had sinned. God came not with thunder and wrath, but with a question, Adam, where are you? It was not ignorance, for God already knew where Adam was. It was an invitation to step out of hiding and come into the light of his presence. And the Lord told me, so it is with my people today. I am still asking, where are you? Not because I do not see them, but because I want them to step forward into my mercy. I want them to know that I see them already, yet my arms are open. My beloved. This was one of the most tender revelations I have ever received. The Lord is not ignorant of your private struggle. He is not shocked by it. He is not surprised when you fall. He already knows. What breaks his heart is not that you have sinned, but that you believe you must run from him instead of to him. The enemy's greatest weapon is not temptation but accusation. The act may last a moment, but the shame lingers for days, weeks, even years. That shame is what silences your prayers, keeps you from reading the word, makes you feel unworthy of ministry, and slowly steals your intimacy with God. But Jesus said, I see, and I do not turn away. I see, and I still call them mine. I see, and my blood is enough. He revealed to me that this is why so many believers never step fully into their calling. They disqualify themselves in their own minds long before the Lord ever would. They carry a hidden guilt that whispers, you cannot be used. You cannot be anointed. You are a hypocrite. But the Lord said, I know what they struggle with, and yet I still placed my spirit within them. I knew their weakness before I chose them, and still I called them. If they will only bring it to me, I will not only forgive them, I will heal them, I will restore them, I will give them strength to stand. At that moment I felt the immense compassion of Christ. It was overwhelming. It was as if he carried the sorrow of every person who has ever cried after falling into the same pattern. He carried the shame of every young believer who feels they cannot tell their pastor, their family, or even their closest friend. He carried the loneliness of every man and woman who prays, God, why can't I stop? And in his voice there was no anger, only the steady, unbreakable love that says, I see you, I know you, and I still want you. That is when it became clear to me. The gaze of Jesus is not like the gaze of man. When people discover your weakness, they may pull away, but when Jesus sees your weakness, when people see your shame, they may condemn, but when Jesus sees your shame, he stretches out his nail-pierced hands and says, give it to me. Nothing is hidden from him, but nothing is too dirty for him to cleanse. Nothing shocks him, and nothing causes him to withdraw his invitation. The Lord spoke again, tell my people that I am not ashamed of them. Tell them I see, and yet I still desire them. Tell them that their weakness does not repel me. It calls forth my mercy. Tell them that I am the one who covers their nakedness with my righteousness, who wipes away their tears, who breaks the cycle of guilt and restores their joy. And I understood that this was the first step toward freedom, not a secret formula, not a sudden perfection, but simply this, to realize that Jesus already sees everything, and yet he does not turn away. He calls you by name, even when you feel most unworthy. He draws near even when you are trying to hide. He already knows, and yet he loves with a love that cannot be measured, a love that cannot be silenced. a love that cannot be broken by your failures. When the Lord began to speak to me further, His words pierced deeper than any sword, cutting through illusions I had never considered before. He said, "This generation seeks pleasure in secret rather than my presence. They fill the emptiness inside with what is temporary, but they do not realize they are drinking from broken cisterns. They are trying to quench a thirst that only I can satisfy." His voice carried both grief and yearning, like a father watching his children starving beside a feast. He made me see that the act of self-gratification is not only a physical weakness, but a spiritual misdirection. It is a replacement, a counterfeit intimacy, where the soul was designed to be satisfied in communion with God. It has instead turned to temporary sensations, illusions of fulfillment that fade away, leaving the heart emptier than before. I saw in the spirit a picture of a well. Some came to it, drawing water with joy, drinking deeply, refreshed and strong. But others bypassed the well and picked up handfuls of dust, placing it to their lips, trying to swallow it, though it gave no life. The Lord said, "That is how my children behave when they turn to lust and self-pleasure, instead of coming to me. They think they are satisfying their need, but they are only filling themselves with dryness that chokes the soul." He reminded me of His words to the Samaritan woman at the wells. "Whoever drinks of this water will thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water that I shall give him will never thirst." The Lord made it clear that the human desire driving these acts is not simply a craving for the body, but a longing of the soul. There is a hunger for connection, a thirst for love, a yearning for peace. Yet instead of running to the living water, many run to broken streams, counterfeit springs, which can never heal the ache inside. The Lord said, "When my children use this as a substitute, they do not realize what is truly happening. They are teaching their souls to be satisfied without me. They are teaching their hearts to find comfort in the temporary, instead of abiding in my presence. And the more they run to this broken substitute, the more their appetite for my spirit is dulled. Their worship loses its fire. Their prayers lose their power. Their hunger for the word grows cold. They are not just sinning, they are starving themselves from the banquet I have prepared for them." I began to tremble as He revealed how subtle this deception is. It is not only about the body, it is about the spirit. A believer can lift their hands in church and sing loudly, yet in their secret life they are exchanging intimacy with God for intimacy with an illusion. The Lord said, "This is idolatry of the flesh." They bow before desire, they serve pleasure, they offer their strength upon the altar of lust. And yet they wonder why their spiritual life is weak, why their prayers seem unanswered, why they feel distant from me. It is because they are feeding on shadows instead of coming into the light of my presence. He showed me a vision of two lovers at a table. One lover poured wine, broke bread, and leaned forward with eyes full of love, eager to share fellowship. But the other sat distracted, restless, and instead of drinking from the cup, turned aside to fill their mouth with scraps from the ground. The Lord said, "This is how many treat me. I invite them to the table of communion, but they are satisfied with crumbs that cannot sustain them. They turn to what is empty when I offer them what is eternal." I felt the sorrow of Jesus at this reality, yet His words carried hope. He said, "They think they are bound to their flesh, but what they truly desire is me. They do not know that their longing for touch is truly a longing for my embrace. Their desire for release is truly a cry for my peace. Their hunger for satisfaction is truly a hunger for my spirit." If they understood this, they would stop trying to fill themselves with broken things and would turn to me, and I would fill them with rivers of living water that never run dry. I understood then that the human body and soul were created with a design to find ultimate fulfillment in God. Every longing, every desire, every ache in the human heart points to Him. When men and women misuse those desires, it is because they have not recognized the true source. They reach for something close at hand, but it is only a shadow of what they truly need. And the more they feed on shadows, the further they drift from the reality of His love. The Lord made me see that this is why so many feel trapped in cycles they cannot break. It is not just habit, it is hunger misplaced. The spirit within them is thirsty, but instead of drinking from the fountain of His presence, they drink from polluted waters. And polluted waters never satisfy. He said, this is why they return again and again. It is not that their bodies demand it. It is that their souls are unsatisfied. The soul will keep searching until it finds the living water. And until they turn to me, they will always thirst again. He gave me a picture of Israel in the wilderness. Though God had given them manna from heaven, food that was pure, holy, and sustaining, they grumbled and longed for the food of Egypt. They said, we remember the fish which we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. They rejected heaven's bread because their appetite was still tied to slavery. And the Lord said, so it is with my children. I offer them manna, the bread of my presence, the joy of the Spirit, the sweetness of communion. But they long for Egypt, for the taste of bondage. They do not see that they are despising my gift for the sake of their cravings. The weight of this truth broke me, because I understood how easily the heart drifts. To satisfy the body for a moment, the soul is robbed of its eternal nourishment. To feel comfort for a night, the spirit loses strength for the battle. To hide in shadows, the believer loses the radiant light that shines in the presence of the Lord. Yet Jesus spoke with unwavering love. He said, I do not condemn them. I call them. I call them to turn from broken cisterns and to drink of me. I call them to see that I alone satisfy. I call them to discover that what they thought was only a struggle of the body is truly a hunger of the Spirit. If they will come to me, I will quench that thirst forever. I will replace their emptiness with joy, their loneliness with my companionship, their shame with my glory. And I realize that the greatest deception is not only the act itself, but believing that it can ever meet the need. It is like chasing the wind, holding smoke in your hands, trying to clutch something that vanishes as soon as you touch it. But the presence of God is the opposite. When you drink of Him, He satisfies, He fills, He overflows. When you come near, He never withdraws. When you taste of His goodness, it is sweeter than any temporary pleasure this world can give. In that holy encounter, the Lord showed me that this is not about the strength of will, nor about the weakness of flesh, but about misplaced desire. He said, their hearts are thirsty, but they drink from the wrong fountain. Their souls are hungry, but they feed on emptiness. If they will come to me, they will discover the true intimacy they were made for, and their hunger will be fulfilled at last. When the Lord spoke to me about this matter, His voice was heavy with both authority and compassion. He said, the enemy does not only tempt, he accuses. After my children fall, it is not the act itself that binds them, but the voice that follows. The enemy whispers, you are unworthy, you are dirty, you are rejected, and they believe it. They carry shame like chains around their necks, not realizing that I broke those chains at the cross. As he spoke, I saw in the Spirit a courtroom. The devil stood as an accuser, pointing at a believer who was trembling in fear. Every time the believer tried to speak, the accuser shouted louder, guilty, guilty, unclean, hypocrite. The believer bowed their head, believing every word, and they could not lift their eyes to the judge. But when I looked closer, I saw that the judge was Jesus himself, seated in glory. His face was not stern with condemnation, but burning with love. He stood and declared, "This case is closed. My blood has already spoken. There is no condemnation for those who are in me." Yet the believer still listened to the voice of the accuser, not realizing that the verdict had already been sealed in heaven. The Lord said, "This is the true bondage. It is not only the habit of sin, but the prison of shame. Shame keeps my people from drawing near. Shame silences their prayers. Shame makes them afraid to worship, afraid to serve, afraid to believe that I still love them. They imagine that I am disgusted with them, but it is the enemy who has painted this picture in their minds. I understood then that shame is more dangerous than the act itself. The act is momentary, but shame lingers, festering like a wound, poisoning the soul over time. And the enemy knows this. He knows that if he can bind you with shame, you will disqualify yourself from the presence of God long before God ever would. You will stop running to Jesus for cleansing and start hiding from him in fear. And in that hiding place, the enemy grows stronger. The Lord showed me a vision of Adam and Eve after the fall. They were hiding among the trees, covering themselves with fig leaves, trembling in fear. God came into the garden not with thunder, not with wrath, but with a question. "Where are you?" His voice was not the voice of an accuser, but of a father seeking his children. Yet they could not see his love, because shame had already clouded their hearts. The Lord said to me, "So it is with many of my children today. They cover themselves with fig leaves of silence, with excuses, with hiding. They run from me though. I am the only one who can heal them. The voice of the accuser has blinded them to my mercy." I began to feel the weight of how many believers live beneath this cloud of shame. They lift their hands in church, but in their hearts they whisper, "I am not worthy." They sing the songs of worship, but their voices tremble with guilt. They step back from ministry opportunities, afraid that if people knew the truth, they would be disqualified. Yet the Lord said, "I qualified them with my blood, not with their perfection. I called them by my grace, not by their works. They have believed a lie. They think I reject them, when in truth I am calling them closer." He reminded me of his words in Revelation. "The accuser of the brethren has been cast down, who accused them before our God day and night." Yet many live as though the accuser still holds the gavel in the courtroom of heaven. They live as though his voice carries more authority than the blood of Jesus. But the Lord said, "My blood is louder. My cross speaks louder than their failures. My mercy cries louder than their shame." I saw another vision, this time of a man standing in chains. Each chain had words written on it: dirty, filthy, unworthy, hypocrite. The man was bent under the weight, barely able to stand. Yet when Jesus walked up to him, he touched the chains, and they turned to dust. He said, "I carried these on the cross. Why do you still wear them?" The man looked at his arms in disbelief, realizing he was free, but still afraid to step forward. The Lord said, "Many of my children are free already, but they live as slaves because they have not believed what I have done for them. They still carry shame that I already carried." As he spoke, I felt the fierce anger of God, not against the sinner, but against the lies of the enemy. He said, "Satan has no authority to condemn those who are in me. He has no right to declare them unclean. He is the father of lies, and yet my people give him more attention than my word. They listen to his accusations more than my promises. They repeat his words in their minds instead of repeating what I have spoken over them. And so they live defeated, not because they are bound, but because they believe they are. I began to weep as I saw the strategy of the enemy laid bare. His greatest weapon is not temptation, but accusation. He entices with sin only to condemn with shame. He lures you into the trap, then beats you with guilt until you are too weak to rise again. He tells you that you are alone, that you are hopeless, that you are unclean forever. He silences your prayers so that you cannot receive the grace waiting for you. And yet Jesus said, I bore their shame. I was stripped naked on the cross, mocked and despised, so that they would never have to carry shame again. I bore their rejection so that they could know my acceptance forever. The Lord revealed that this is why so many believers live powerless lives. Shame keeps them from walking in boldness. Shame keeps them from laying hands on the sick, from preaching the gospel, from stepping into their calling. They feel like imposters, so they hide in the shadows, waiting for perfection before they obey. But the Lord said, it is not perfection that qualifies them, it is my Spirit. It is not their holiness that makes them worthy, it is my blood. The enemy knows if they discover this truth, they will walk in authority. That is why he surrounds them with lies. That is why he shouts so loudly, because he fears the day they stop listening. In that moment, I understood that the only way to silence the accuser is to believe the testimony of Jesus. His blood speaks better things than the voice of guilt. His cross is louder than every whisper of unworthiness. His resurrection declares that the power of sin and shame has already been broken. But the tragedy is that many still live as though the tomb is sealed, as though the price has not been paid, as though the chains have not been broken. I felt the Lord's grief, but also His unrelenting determination. He said, tell my people that shame is not from me. Conviction draws them closer, but shame drives them away. My Spirit convicts so they can be cleansed, but the enemy condemns so they will hide. I do not speak the language of shame. I speak the language of love, of mercy, of restoration. Let them hear my voice above every other voice. The picture grew clearer. Shame is the enemy's counterfeit of conviction. Conviction is like a surgeon's hand, cutting only to heal, drawing you closer to the healer. Shame is like a poison that spreads through the soul, convincing you that you are beyond help. And many mistake the poison of shame for the voice of God, never realizing that the one who hung on the cross would never push them away, never heap scorn upon their wounds, never speak words that strip them of hope. His voice is life, His words are spirit, and His gaze is mercy. The Lord's voice thundered gently in my spirit. I see the hidden shame, and I call it a lie. I see the secret fear, and I call it broken. I see the chains of accusation, and I declare them destroyed. My blood has already spoken. Let my people believe me more than they believe their enemy. Let them rise from the ashes of condemnation and walk in the liberty I have purchased. When the Lord began to reveal this truth to me, His voice carried both the weight of holiness and the warmth of a father. He said, how can my spirit flow through a vessel that is chained to secret sin? My power is pure, my anointing is holy, and I long to pour it out upon my children. But when they give themselves to impurity, their vessel becomes clouded, their heart becomes divided, and their spiritual authority is weakened. As He spoke, I could feel the grief of heaven, not because God does not love His people, but because He has called them to so much more than the chains they allow themselves to wear. He showed me a vision of a lamp. The lamp was designed to shine brightly in the darkness, to fill a room with radiant light, but the glass was covered with soot and grime. The flame inside was burning, but the light could not shine fully because the glass was stained. The Lord said, this is what impurity does to the life of a believer. The flame of my spirit is within them, but the vessel is clouded. Their witness is dimmed. Their prayers are hindered, and their boldness is weakened. I long for them to shine like the stars. But how can they shine when they are veiled in darkness? I felt the weight of his sorrow, because his desire is not only that we be saved, but that we walk in power. He has called his people to cast out demons, to heal the sick, to declare his word with authority, to bring his kingdom to earth. Yet when believers live in hidden compromise, the boldness drains from their spirit. They may know the scriptures, but they lack the confidence to speak with authority. They may pray, but their prayers lack fire. They may worship, but their hearts whisper, "You are unworthy," and the enemy silences them with accusations. The Lord said, "I have given them authority." But impurity robs them of the confidence to use it. They cannot stand against the devil boldly when they are secretly bowing to him in the shadows. I saw in the spirit a soldier standing in the battlefield. He was armed with armor and weapons, yet his belt was loose and his shield was cracked. The enemy approached, laughing, not because the soldier was powerless, but because his defenses were compromised. The Lord said, "So it is with my people. I have given them the armor of God. I have given them the sword of the Spirit. But impurity loosens their armor, dulls their blade, and weakens their shield. They still belong to me, but they fight without strength. They still carry my name, but they lack the confidence of those who walk in holiness." The Lord made me understand that purity is not a restriction, it is empowerment. It is not about taking away joy, but about opening the channel of his power. He said, "When my children walk in purity, they are bold as lions. They do not tremble before the accuser. They do not cower before temptation. Their prayers shake the heavens. Their words carry weight, for their vessel is clean, and my spirit flows through them without hindrance." But when they choose impurity, it is like trying to drink from a well that has been poisoned. The water is there, but it is bitter. The flow is hindered, the taste is spoiled. I thought of Samson, a man chosen and anointed from birth. The Spirit of God came upon him with great power, and he was able to slay armies, to tear apart lions, to carry the gates of a city. Yet his weakness for secret sin became the doorway for his downfall. The Lord said, "Samson did not lose his strength in a single moment. He lost it through compromise. He toyed with impurity, and eventually the enemy cut off his locks. So it is with many of my children. They do not lose their authority in one day. They lose it through the quiet compromises, the secret indulgences, the things they believe are small, but which open great doors to the enemy." He showed me another vision of a river. It flowed with power, rushing like mighty waters. But debris began to fill it, branches, stones, and filth, until the flow slowed, and the water could not reach the land downstream. The Lord said, "My spirit is like this river. It longs to flow freely, to refresh, to heal, to bring life wherever it goes. But impurity is the debris that clogs the flow. My spirit is not gone, but the flow is hindered. If only they would allow me to cleanse the river, to remove the obstacles, they would see a mighty outpouring beyond what they have ever imagined." The weight of this revelation shook me, because it became clear that the level of purity directly impacts the level of authority. A believer does not lose their salvation because of weakness, but they lose the sharpness of their anointing. They lose the clarity of their hearing. They lose the boldness to stand before men and demons with unshakable confidence. And the enemy knows this. He knows that if he cannot take your soul, he will try to take your authority. He knows that if he cannot steal your salvation, he will try to dull your effectiveness. So he whispers, "It is just a small sin. It is just a private indulgence, no one will know. But what seems small in secret becomes great in its effect, draining strength, dimming light, and silencing the voice of one who was called to roar like a lion. I remembered the words of Paul. In a great house there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honor and some for dishonor. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from the latter, he will be a vessel for honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. The Lord said, I want all my children to be vessels of honor. I want them to carry my power without hindrance. I want them to lay hands on the sick and see them recover, to cast out demons with authority, to preach my word with fire. But how can they be vessels of honor if they are filling themselves with dishonor in secret? How can they command darkness to flee if they are entertaining darkness in the quiet places of their hearts? His voice was not condemning but urgent. It was like a father calling his children out of danger, pleading with them to see what they could become if they surrendered fully. He said, purity is the key to authority. Holiness is the doorway to power. My anointing rests upon clean hands and a pure heart. I do not withhold myself because I am cruel, but because I desire vessels through whom my spirit can flow unhindered. If they would cleanse their hearts, if they would surrender their secret sins, they would walk in a level of power that would shake the nations. I saw again the image of the lamp, but this time the glass was being cleaned. As the soot was wiped away, the light grew brighter until it filled the entire room. And the Lord said, this is what I long to do in every life. I want to cleanse the vessel, to remove the stain, to make them shine with a light that no darkness can withstand. My authority is already theirs, but purity is what allows them to walk in it boldly. I then saw a vision of believers standing before demonic forces. Some stood trembling, their voices weak, their authority doubted even by themselves. Others stood tall, their eyes aflame with confidence, their words like fire. The difference was not in how much they were loved by God, but in how much they had surrendered. The Lord said, the enemy fears the believer who walks in purity, because he knows that such a one carries the authority of heaven with no compromise. But when a believer is chained to impurity, the enemy laughs, for he knows their words carry no weight. The Lord pressed this truth deep into my heart. Authority is not only given, it is exercised. And it is exercised with confidence when the heart is clean. A believer who knows they are pure can stand before God without fear and before the enemy without trembling. Their prayers rise like incense. Their worship breaks chains. Their voice shakes the atmosphere. But when impurity lingers, their own heart condemns them, and though they are loved, they feel powerless. The authority is there, but it lies dormant beneath the weight of compromise. As I listened, I felt both the love and the urgency of Jesus. He longs for his people to rise, to walk in the fullness of what he purchased with his blood. He longs for them to move in miracles, in signs and wonders, in bold proclamation of his kingdom. But he waits for them to choose purity, to surrender what is hidden, to allow him to cleanse the vessel so that his spirit can flow without resistance. He waits not with anger, but with longing, like a father waiting for his child to step into their inheritance. And he repeated again, purity unlocks spiritual authority. Holiness opens the door to my power. Those who surrender will walk in a dimension of my spirit that they cannot yet imagine. When the Lord began to speak about freedom, his voice was filled with both tenderness and authority. He said, my children think they can fight this battle by themselves. They believe if they just try harder, if they discipline themselves more, if they make more promises, they will be able to break free. But they do not realize that human willpower was never designed to defeat spiritual chains. Flesh cannot conquer what is rooted in the spirit. They fail, they weep, they rise again, they fall again. And in despair they cry, I will never change. But I say to them, if they bring their weakness to me, my spirit will set them free. For whom the Son sets free is free indeed. As he spoke, I saw a picture of a man trapped in a cage. The bars were thick, and he pushed with all his strength against them. His muscles strained, his face turned red, and he fell back exhausted. Again and again he tried to bend the bars, but they did not move. Finally, in exhaustion, he sat down and cried. Then I saw Jesus approach the cage. He did not hand the man a stronger tool or tell him to try harder. Instead, he reached out and touched the lock, and it fell open instantly. The man looked in shock, realizing the door had been unlocked not by his effort, but by the presence of the Lord. And the Lord said, so it is with many of my children. They are exhausting themselves in striving. But freedom does not come from willpower, it comes from surrender. The Lord showed me how deeply rooted pride is in human hearts. Even in the struggle against sin, he said, they do not want to admit their helplessness. They want to believe they can overcome in their own strength. But true freedom comes when they confess, Lord, I cannot do this without you. I am weak, I am powerless, I am dependent upon your Spirit. When they finally lay down their pride and call upon my name, my power is released in their weakness. I saw in the Spirit an image of Peter walking on the water. As long as his eyes were on Jesus, he stood firm on the waves. But when he looked at the storm, he began to sink. He cried out, Lord, save me. And immediately, Jesus reached out and pulled him up. The Lord said, it was not Peter's ability that kept him above the waves. It was his dependence on me. So it is with my people. If they try to fight temptation in their own strength, they will sink again and again. But if they cry out to me in their weakness, I will lift them by my Spirit. The Lord then showed me how many believers mistake self-discipline for deliverance. He said, they try to set rules, to avoid temptation, to control their environment. These things may help for a time, but unless the root is dealt with, the chains remain. Rules do not change hearts. Willpower does not remove desire. Only my Spirit transforms from the inside out. Only my presence can quench the thirst that drives them to sin. I understood then that true freedom is not about suppressing desire, but about replacing it. The Lord said, when they taste of my presence, when they drink deeply of my Spirit, the counterfeit pleasures lose their grip. A man who has tasted living water no longer thirsts for polluted streams. A heart that has experienced my love no longer craves shadows. This is why I say, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Rest is not found in trying harder. Rest is found in surrendering to me. I saw a vision of a child trying to carry a heavy stone up a hill. The child stumbled, dropped it, picked it up again, and kept climbing, sweating and crying. Then I saw the father come and kneel beside the child. He opened his arms, and the child dropped the stone and fell into his embrace. Instantly, the burden was gone. The father carried the child up the hill. The Lord said, this is the picture of freedom. My children struggle with burdens they cannot carry, but if they will fall into my arms, I will carry them. I do not ask them to conquer in their own strength. I ask them to lean on me. The Lord reminded me of Paul's words. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Paul did not boast in his power, but in his weakness, because in weakness the power of Christ rested upon him. The Lord said, this is the secret many do not understand. They hide their weakness in shame instead of bringing it to me. But if they would confess their weakness openly before me, I would cover them with my strength. If they would stop pretending to be strong and admit that they are weak, they would discover that I am strong within them. I saw another vision, a man standing before a massive wall. He had been trying to climb it for years, but every time he slipped back down. He tried ladders, ropes, and hooks, but nothing worked. Then I saw Jesus walk up, not with tools, but with a key. He opened a hidden gate in the wall, and the man walked through easily. The Lord said, "This wall is the sin they cannot overcome. They believe they must climb over it with effort, but I am the gate. When they come through me, the wall is no longer an obstacle." The Lord explained that this is why many remain in cycles of defeat. They think freedom is the reward of effort, when in truth freedom is the fruit of surrender. They wait until they are stronger before coming to Him. But He said, "I do not ask them to be strong before they come. I ask them to come as they are, weak and broken, because only then can I be their strength." He showed me how deeply personal this process is. He said, "Each of my children has different wounds, different battles, different triggers. They cannot use the same formula as another, but my Spirit knows their heart intimately. I know the root of their struggle. I know where the thirst comes from. And if they will allow me to go deep, I will heal not only the behavior, but the broken place that drives it. I will heal the loneliness, the rejection, the wounds of the past. My Spirit does not only forgive, it restores." I began to see that freedom is not a one-time act, but a daily surrender. The Lord said, "They want instant change, but freedom is often a journey. Each day they must come to me. Each day they must surrender afresh. But as they walk with me, their desires change, their hearts are renewed, their appetite for sin fades, and their hunger for me grows. This is the work of my Spirit, not the effort of man." I saw believers kneeling in prayer, confessing their weakness before the Lord. Some came trembling, afraid He would turn them away. But instead, He knelt beside them, lifted their faces, and whispered, "I love you. I will not let you go. I will walk with you until you are free." His arms wrapped around them, and I saw chains falling from their bodies, not because they pulled them off, but because His presence dissolved them. The Lord said, "This is how freedom comes, not through striving, but through abiding in me." He spoke again, "Tell my people that they cannot fight this battle in silence. They must bring it into my light. They must stop hiding their weakness as if I cannot see. They must come boldly, even with their failures, and lay them at my feet. The blood of my cross has already made a way. The chains they fear are stronger than them, but they are not stronger than me. My Spirit is greater than their struggle. My love is stronger than their bondage. My grace is deeper than their shame." I felt the fire of His compassion as He spoke these words. He longs to see His people walk in freedom, not because He demands perfection, but because He desires intimacy. He wants them to know the joy of walking without fear, without guilt, without chains. He wants them to know that freedom is not found in human effort, but in surrender to His Spirit. He wants them to taste the reality that whom the Son sets free is free indeed.